Good afternoon, this is Reed Stout from Rex Game Studios, and I'm going to discuss the Day 4 severe weather outbreak that could take place this weekend over the Central Plains and North Central Plains. So let's get right into it here. And what we've got here, if you look at this chart here, SPC has created this outlook on Day 4 and 5, and you can see quite a large area of potentially severe weather. That could take place all the way from southern Minnesota down through central Oklahoma, and that area expands a little bit further southward and eastward. And I think at this point, really anywhere from about Minneapolis all the way down to Oklahoma City, and eventually down to Dallas, Fort Worth, and then extending all the way over into central Oklahoma, there is a good potential for severe weather these next coming days this weekend, on Sunday and on Monday. Right now in this video we're going to focus only on Day 4 at this point. Moving forward, the surface winds on 12Z. Now at this point in time, we see a lot of veering winds, and although the models here are showing lighter winds, I think the winds are going to be a little stronger. This cyclone will be intensifying throughout the day. Probably will develop either over southern South Dakota or central Nebraska. Right now it looks like the chart here is kind of targeting that region. Either way, the Gulf of Mexico is wide open for moisture return at the surface. We definitely have veering winds aloft or at the surface at this point. So for rotating storms, the potential is a lot higher. And really, I think this is going to be our first major severe weather event of the season that has really all the parameters coming together. The event that we had take place in April and in March, a lot of those troughs were coming in as a positive tilt, and they were really lacking a lot of the dynamics. The dynamics were not linking up in time with the winds and so forth. So this one shows a greater potential out of all the other previous storms this year. At this chart, you can see at 925 millibars, the winds are pretty strong at this level, at least reaching up to about 40 knots, extending all the way up to central Kansas and around the Kansas City areas where the tongue of that's going to be focused. We go up to 850 millibar levels. Again, we have a strong low-level jet that's forming. Again, really, I think that the prime area, according to all the charts, is going to be this region here is where the greatest potential for severe weather, I think, is going to be at this point. Moving up to the 500 millibar level, again, you can see a strong negative tilt to trough developing over the west that's going to be pushing into this really warm and humid air that's going to be in place there for quite a while. Very strong diffluent flow aloft, so the forcing of the thunderstorm activity will be great. Moving to the 250 millibar level, again the winds aloft, positive or above 100 knots or greater. Now my only concern here that we're going to have, we'll talk about this in just a few minutes, is the upper level winds at this level over the potential severe weather area are not going to be super strong at this point. And what concerns me is we may have really strong speed shear, but when it comes to directional shear, the directional shear may be actually pretty weak. So thunderstorms that do pop up will be severe, and we may get strong tornadoes, but they may not be long-lasting, quick traveling tornadoes, simply because the storms the updrafts may not be sustained long enough at this point. So we're going to have to really watch this. Now, the interesting thing is this jet is beelining all the way towards around the Oklahoma City, Tulsa area, and even though there's going to be a strong cap in place, the parameters there, everything else is going to be there and in place, that if severe weather could develop, we could see longer track tornadoes in this region. So anywhere from about Oklahoma all the way up to about Wichita over to Springfield, Missouri is really going to have to keep an eye on what this severe weather could be down the road. because we could begin to see the weak directional shear begin to increase throughout the day as time goes on, especially as we move into day 5. And I think because of the strong cap, we are going to have more discrete supercells on the southern branch of the system. So there's going to be a lot of parameters we're going to have to look at that day once it gets closer. Looking at the surface dew points at this time, and again this is at 12Z. Obviously surface dew points are way up in the mid 60s, some pockets of 70-degree dew points. I think this may be a little underdone in this region. I think we actually may have greater dew points in this region than what's showing here. Obviously we got a bulging dry line pushing into western Oklahoma, so we're gonna have to watch that. I didn't put this on here, but if you look at the 500 millibar temperatures aloft, I think you've got a really strong cold air advection pushing in because of that strong jet on the backside of this negative trough. So I really do think this cap is going to break as time goes on, and I really think anywhere from about Des Moines all the way to Kansas City, down to Wichita and Tulsa, possibly even Oklahoma City, all the way out to Springfield and over, those areas have the greatest potential for tornadic activity, and some of that could be quite strong with some of those tornadoes. Looking at instability, you can see again this is at 12Z, so this is more towards the morning. At this time in the morning, we've already got lifted indices of -7 or greater in some areas. So instability is not going to be a problem. There's going to be plenty of heat, plenty of CAP values in place. The question is how strong is the CAP going to be at this point in time? Looking at the bulk shear, to be honest with you, I think the models here are underdoing it. It may be this week in the morning, but I think it's going to be significantly growing, especially as that 100-knot jet starts moving in and nosing into this warm moist air. I think it's going to increase the low-level jet as time goes on. This surface low will be intensifying throughout the day, so I think even though these values are only showing about 30 knots, I think they'll be increasing to 40 to 45 knots at this level. Again, from around Kansas City down to Tulsa, over to Springfield, in those areas, I think this is where the more significant shear is going to be. And if we look at the 850 millibar bulk shear, again, that's the region that shows it there. So let's talk about the pros and cons of this event. The pros are a really strong negative tilted trough coming in. That's the first one we really have of this year. So there's going to be a lot of dynamics coming in with this storm system, a lot of diffluent flow aloft. Strong speed shear, that's not going to be a question at all, especially at the lower levels. Significant low-level shear is going to be available for rotating thunderstorms and rotating updrafts, especially at the lower levels. So I think we're going to see tornadoes. There's definitely going to be a good chance for tornadoes during this time. There's going to be significant heating and instability. That won't be a question. We'll probably see some CAPE values of 4,000 plus in some areas during this time. And a lot of it depends on what the previous day's convection is going to be. There might be a couple of MCSs that develop that might lay down some boundaries there. So we'll have to see where those develop on day 3 and how they affect the region. The cons of the day, however, though, is we are going to have strong capping, especially south, especially those areas further south. There is going to be strong capping. However, I don't think it's going to be as strong as we think because of that low-level jet. There's a really strong cold advection coming in underneath this troughs at about 500 millibars and 700 millibar levels. So I don't think it's going to be significant as the models are showing or some other people are talking about here. It might be a little quicker to erode than what we believe. The only question that I have in place right now is the weak directional shear. So the updrafts, we have strong directional shear. The nice thing about that is it pulls the downdraft away from the updraft, and therefore the thunderstorms are more long-lived. Because they're going to be closer, they'll quickly go to severe limits, but they might be quickly dissipating soon after that, or they may not maintain their rotation as well. However, They may cycle quite a bit as time goes on because, again, there is strong speed shear in place. There is a concern of some moisture return further north that you go, anywhere north of Kansas City. I think we might be struggling with some moisture, and again,